Welcome to Circle of Hearts Radio. Journey with Grandmother Alaya as she enters her magical world of relics, sacred sites, and ancient crystal skulls. Meet with exciting trailblazer authors and individuals shifting the consciousness of humanity. Send her your questions to be answered on air on her monthly segment, Ask the Oracle. And now your host, Grandmother Alaya, in the sanctuary on the airwaves on OMTimes Radio.
Alaya. Today we have a special show. Well, all our shows are special anyway. But if you follow my show, you always know, you never know exactly what to expect. That I do follow guidance in all the people that, we bring in the circle here to talk to us. Because they're wonderful people sharing their stories about their lives. And, we learn from each other. And I had a very interesting experience the past few weeks in going the way the shows work is, sometimes we're given, potentials for interviews. And my next guest, I saw her name and I immediately raised my hand. Okay, I want to contact whatever, because I had this deep gut push, and she'll know what I mean, that I needed to go meet her. And her name is, she's known by her name, Chef Rossi. And her book is The Raging Skillet, The True Life Story of Chef Rossi, a memoir. Now you're asking, okay, why are we going to be talking with this chef? For me. But it's not. Food is the essence of life. It's what nourishes us. It's what, brings us together as family. We celebrate with food, whether birth, death, weddings. I mean, everything always is food related. So what's interesting, when I first did this and made the contact, I had a major panic attack saying, oh my God, what am I going to talk about here? But I have a background in my own family of catering. And I said, okay, well, I can do this. I can hold my own. But when I got the book, I'm reading it, and it's her life journey, from what her childhood and what it brought, all her experiences that brought up to this point. And what's even better, has a few recipes in it, which is really nice, because you just feel like you're meeting family. And Chef Rossi is a great storyteller. And she expresses her, whole life story with fun. And if you ever get to see it on YouTube, she has, some videos, and she make a great stand-up comic. You really would. And she talks with her hands, which I think is great, but, she's always bringing out the energy. When you watch her talk, she's passionate, and the energy is moving from her heart, and she's embracing the world, and she's embracing the people, and saying, hey, but she's a lot of warmth is coming from her. So it's not like she's sitting at a podium and saying, okay, well, this is my life story. This is how I got this. I mean, no, she's full of life, and full of, in her book, you'll laugh. There's some parts, bring tears to your eyes. I'm going to ask her about, 911 and Hurricane Sandy. We're both from New Jersey, so, I can relate to, those events also. And she's one very special lady. And she may have a chef's hat on now. And I'll read her promo from her book. This is where she's at the moment. But I think you need to really keep an eye on her, because she's going to do a lot of good things in this world. Because Chef Rossi grew up in New York City, Orthodox light. Her family kept the meat and dairy dishes separate, but ate McDonald's fish sandwiches. A rebellious daughter, she was shipped off from her Hungarian Yiddish family to live with a Chef Rossi. Can you say that, Shadida?
Oh, I was shipped off to live with the Hasids.
Oh,
And
okay.
my mother somehow thought that this was going to from me up, which means make me more religious.
Little does she know. I think you were when I was getting to know you, I think as far as let's bring the spiritual into here, from a soul path, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna come back to earth. You're reincarnated. Let's open our little mind. And I think you came in with a hot pink T-shirt that said, "I'm gonna do it my own way."
Sounds about right.
But you speak a lot of your family, but in your your young years, you were very traditional.
Well, I mean, I say really it's like we grew up lowly Orthodox. So, I mean, there's Orthodox where you're like very religious, and there's conservative where you're not that religious. I guess my mother growing up had been the real deal Orthodox, but later on she got into kind of what I would call a Reader's Digest version of Jewish, where everything had the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, to be kosher, you're supposed to keep the meat and dairy dishes separate. And if you accidentally use the meat fork in the cottage cheese or something like that, you're supposed to take it and bury it out in the backyard or underground somewhere.
Oh,
And then you dig it up. I don't remember if it's 6 days or 6 weeks later. And at some point, you're supposed to dig it up. But we would never remember. And so, my dad would put a tomato plant over it, or we'd mow the lawn or whatever, and the forks and knives would be forgotten. So my mother started to say instead, when we accidentally used the fork in the dairy or whatever, she would scream, "Just stab it in the plant." And we always had all these rubber plants, so we would stab the fork in the plant. And then again, we would forget about it. So these plants would keep growing, and they would have knives and forks impaled in them, and they just looked like monstrous. I would have friends come over from school, and they would be like, "What is wrong with this plant?" But that was just sort of an example of my mother's shortened version of Judaism, with a little laziness and a little sense of humor is just kind of how it flew.
Yeah, she definitely did things her way too.
Oh, yeah.
And I know when you're reading this book, I don't know if you ran into this with family members of worried, she's going to tear us apart. But it really is, it's the most loving book. It really is. I mean, I looked at the early years, and before you decide, as you per se quotes, became a badass.
Mm-hmm.
You can really relate to it. Is of a young girl redefining herself, trying to find it to fit in. So you, instead of becoming a victim of others saying, "Okay, we're gonna push you away, you don't fit in,"
Mm-hmm.
you redefine yourself into a bully with a heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what it was. I was like, really, since the moment I was born, I think I've had some sort of raging fire in me, like I had a point to prove or something. And I remember being very young and really rallying against what boys were allowed to do, what girls were allowed to do. And I was like, why can't a girl do this? And why can't a girl do that? So it's been kind of a life of, I guess, trying to prove that women can do everything men can do. But the truth of the matter is that women, I think, can do a whole lot more, I mean, we can't make a pee-pee in the snow the way men can do. But beyond that, I think we're pretty dynamic. So having come from this world of double standards, it just infuriated me. And I kind of feel like my whole life was about proving that women had all of this power, and a lot of the women I met were very powerful, but afraid to open up that box, afraid to just let it fly.
And I think this is, a very important part by being vulnerable. And that's even though, throughout the whole book, you were always proving yourself. You're a very hard worker, and you always, if somebody says you couldn't do it, you kind of turned around, well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
Or if they said, I'm going to give you a job that's totally impossible for one person, you stuck to it. I'm
Right.
going to prove them wrong.
Right. It wasn't always easy, but yeah.
But this was values, that you brought up. And this is also what, I mean, we talk about the book a lot because this is who she is. And this is what I want people to know. It's not a book about, well, my parents taught me how to cook. And this is how it evolved. And then I went to chef school, and now I'm this great chef.
No.
No, this is the story of a girl fighting against everything that was thrown at her and succeeding. And I think that's what people can relate to. Maybe they have their own stories.
Right. I hope so.
But what you even said about women, this is a time of people, even, yeah, we always try to come out, and always kind of a little bit beaten down, or allowed society to beat us down. Because if you became your own person, they said, well, this is not womanhood. This is not where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to follow certain rules.
Right. We're supposed to be submissive.
Yeah, and we're not. And this gets us in a lot of trouble half the time.
I know. I remember one of the first things I did when I decided to get into catering was my partner at the time said, well, it's not enough just to be back of the house, which is what the chefs are. You have to understand the whole picture. So I need to send you out as a waiter on a few jobs so that you can understand their end of things too, which actually was a very smart thing to do. But I went out to try to be a waiter so I could understand what it was like to be in their shoes, and I was terrible at it. And I think the biggest reason was that I didn't have a submissive bone in my body. So when people kept asking me to take their dirty plates, I would get insulted.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM.
We're back with Chef Rossi, and I know on the show that many of us talk about the sense of oneness and respect for each other, but any business or the catering business, even, the little bit I did, which is like this little fraction compared to what you do, it is so competitive and dog-eat-dog that I don't know how you did it. I really don't.
It's called chutzpah.
Oh, is that what it is? Because it's you're constantly dealing with people, and you're for a person that has that sense of rebellion, not rebellious, but a sense of self, and to always have to please people. You do it naturally. I mean, you're sort of, what I see is like the earth mama type person. Come, eat. Let me, let me feed you. Let me make you, happy.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have the people, like, instead of taking your warmth, it's like, oh, I don't like that. Or why don't you, maybe something, I don't know how you did it.
A lot of very difficult people out there. I mean, for lack of a better word, I'll call them yahoos. I had to do a seminar recently. It was at a kind of a convention, and the subject was how to put the love back in the wedding industry.
Mm-hmm.
So the wedding industry in particular is kind of horrifying, sort of like a used car sales lot. All these very tired, jaded people that are just selling things that they don't have a lot of passion about. And here's a bride and groom, or a bride and bride, or a groom and groom, about to get married. It might be the most important day of their life, but they're confronted with a professional who's just sort of seeing them as a number, or as part of the wedding factory or something.
Mm.
So I was giving this class, and I kind of thought it was cute. I pulled out a blackboard, and I was like thinking of myself as a teacher, But the main thing was that if the bride and groom happen to be, fairly horrifying, it does happen, and their parents are really difficult and demanding, and, you don't really have anyone that you can form an affectionate bond to, it's very easy just to start thinking of it as a factory. So for me, I really need to kind of get the love on, when I'm doing an event. So what I do is I find somebody in the audience, or in this case, in the ceremony or at a table, I find somebody that I feel I can kind of get my love on for. Usually I'll target the elderly. They're always a good one for me. So maybe the bride's grandmother. And I'll just tell myself I'm cooking for her.
Mm.
And then I can kind of get my love going. But really, in the end, I mean, food is love. I always sign my books the same way, kind of happened organically. The first time someone asked me to sign a book, I didn't know what I was going to write. So I just sort of looked down, and my hand and my pen were writing. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what my hand's doing. And out came food is love. And I was like, there you have it. I guess that's why I do this anyway. And been signing my books that way ever since. But it's true. I mean, you can go to a dive restaurant in the middle of nowhere and eat an order of fried eggs that just taste like God made it. I mean, somebody is in that kitchen loving that food. And you can go into the fanciest, ritziest restaurant and sit down and have a meal that just tastes like it's missing its soul. They might have gone to cooking school or followed the recipe, but clearly no one in that kitchen has got any love going. And
No, go ahead.
I mean, it is something you can taste and you can feel,
I totally believe it. It's like I think that's the whole thing. When I was kidding you about, talking with your hands and the full, it's you're full of passion for what you do. And I think that's what has made you so successful, because you relate to people. And yes, weddings are super important, because even in my younger years, my husband was a DJ.
Oh.
And this little old lady here now, I used to have to go and talk to the bride and groom, get the music ready, introduce them. He even stuck me out there doing the chicken dance on YMCA. But the thing is, this is their day, something to always remember. And you're so right. No matter what the celebration, whether it's a birth or a death or a wedding, food is love. Food is life. It nourishes the soul. And this is what I think, to coin a phrase, I really, people want to read a book, a feel-good book. This is sort of like the chicken soup for the soul type of book.
Sure.
And Chef Rossi's story is inspiring. I mean, if you really, it's not that she intended it to be. It's just she has so many circumstances in life that, when she shared them, and they're true. It's not something she could make up.
No, nobody could make this up. I mean, I've had people in my life that say, this is so crazy. You must have made it up. I'm like, nobody's that talented,
So this is what is so much fun about the book. It was really one that I didn't want to put down because I really got to know her through her book, and you feel the warmth. And that's what has made her successful in what she does. It's not even the success in the business. It's success as a person relating to other people. Because even in her business, she doesn't, everybody's equal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one big team, one big family that's working toward a goal. I mean, that's how I see you.
You're right. I mean, I've been told that I'm a profoundly terrible businesswoman. I've had people in my office. I remember I had a chef that would kind of stand behind this little dividing wall between the office and the kitchen. And when I'd come out, he would just have his jaw like down on the floor. And he's like, I can't believe that you're in business. He goes, you're giving it all away. And I would be on the phone telling clients, oh, you should buy your own alcohol. You'll save the money. Oh, you should totally go shopping in Brooklyn for your wedding cake. You'll save like $5 a person. And he was like, how on earth are you staying in business? You're like giving away half your profit. And I said, listen, these people are so happy to be buying their own alcohol and their own wedding cake that they love me. And they're going to tell all their friends about me, and all their friends are going to tell their friends about me. And it's pretty much been going that way for a long time. Like I'm sort of known as like the anti-caterer just because I never lie. I mean, I can't lie anyway. You definitely don't want me at a poker game. I'm a terrible liar. Forget it, So since I can't lie, and I don't want to anyway, I just tell them the truth. I'll break down the bill and I'll say, look, this is the only place on your bill I'm making money. So no, I don't want to lower it. I want to make a little money. Whatever. Anyway, they like it. They like someone just talking to them so real. And then when I sit down with them, I think it's very normal in my industry to show them, 5 or 6 menus and say, do you want wedding A or wedding B? Or just kind of tell them what they're going to do. And so the people are usually a little traumatized by the time they sit down with me. And they're like, okay, what do we have to do? Here we go. It reminds me of that Dunkin' Donuts commercial, like time to make the donuts, Yeah. And I always say, what do you want to do? And they're like, I beg your pardon. And I say, if you had one meal left to live, before you knew you were going to die in 1 week, what would you eat? And then they're like, well, I really like fried chicken, but I love brisket, but I'm having a fancy sit-down dinner. How can I do that? And I'm like, are you kidding? We're going to have brisket as the entree and fried chicken as the hors d'oeuvre. Like, why not, Anyway, it's kind of fun to get people to play. They're all little boys and girls in there, like just kind of bring it all out and play.
So I think this is from all your experiences in life. I think this is this is what molded you into being you.
Right.
And like I said, there's so many experiences in her life, and like I said, she, they portray her as the rebel, but I say the rebel with a heart, because sometimes the rebel thing is like, oh, well, this, you're unapproachable. You're going to take my head off.
Right.
You're so flamboyant that, okay, it's my way, or, forget anything. But this is not Chef Rossi.
No.
And like I said, I'm glad you came on air because, people can hear your voice. They can hear the passion in your voice. And you're very real and very approachable. And this shows in the book. Like, we're even heading to the second, break pretty soon. But on the next break, I'd like, to go into a little bit about the 9, 11 experience in New York for you, and also Hurricane Sandy, because just even being from Jersey myself and watching all this and feeling frustrated, not being able to help anybody. I mean, you were in the trenches on both of them.
Yeah.
So this is real. I mean, as much as I love, many of these other chefs, I mean, I watch Food Network. And I have to find out at some point what she did on Food Network. But I can't see some of them doing that. It's like, no. You were there, you were helping. I think this is part of your personality. And a lot of it, what I want people to realize, is from your family. When you read the book and she makes light of things, there's no judgment. It's all pure love. This happened, and, if this situations may be funny, but she's not criticizing.
No, definitely not.
So, that's what I'm saying. You're a special lady. You do inspire. And there's a lot from my looking at this book of saying, there's a lot of soul lessons here. And you didn't even realize you were going through them. You were just trying to get through life.
I was just on survivor mode.
Well, you're doing pretty good.
Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that.
So before the break, what did you do on Food Network?
Oh, they had me on a show called Cooking Live. And it was an amazing show, and I was demonstrating a seared tuna. And people were calling in and asking questions while I was on the show. And a couple of things was that I didn't know what the questions would be, and we were on live TV. And someone asked me what fenugreek was, and I didn't know, but I bluffed it in a really clever way on the air.
Well, that's really good. We'll have to continue that real quick before we come back.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Aliyah, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
We're back with Chef Rossi, and how did it feel to be on TV and to, was it nerve-wracking?
Well, I don't know why it was that I was coming on a show called Cooking Live, but I somehow didn't realize it was live. Until I was like, really? I don't get a redo? And the cameras are on me, and I'm preparing this tuna, which is nerve-wracking enough to be cooking on live TV. But also people are calling in and asking me questions while I'm doing it, and I don't know what they're going to ask me. So it was a fenugreek-crusted tuna, and this guy calls up, and he goes, I just want to know what fenugreek is. Now, it's a spice. I don't know. I don't know what the hell fenugreek was. It turns out later on I looked it up, and it's in the grass family. But so I said, well, do you ever go out to dinner and you get this weird taste in the back of your throat, usually at an Indian restaurant? And he goes, yeah. And I go, that's fenugreek. Next caller, please.
Very creative. Very creative.
I know, I was winging it. So the show was really popular, and I guess they replayed it for a couple of years. But I was told afterwards by the producers that evidently I had this really long, beautiful piece of tuna, and before I seared it, it was just so beautiful. I was holding it, and I guess I was touching it in a sensual way that, it sort of looked like I was stroking a penis, basically.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, maybe that's why the show was so popular, I guess, But everyone just thought it was kind of funny. And afterwards I thought, well, it was such a beautiful piece of tuna that it was sensual to me. So, I had some affection for it. So I guess I was like petting it. I don't know. But it kind of made me think about it. I think it was the first time I realized how much affection I had for just a great piece of food,
Well, that, you see the beauty
in
food. It's not just something to work with. It has its own essence. It has its own energy, its own color. And it's almost like an artistry type of thing. I often wonder if you're, in a different timeline. You're familiar with Julia Child?
Of course. She's like,
can you imagine the two of you in a kitchen?
I would be hysterical. I'm a huge fan of hers. You have to understand, I don't like recipes. I don't like to follow recipes. I don't like cooking shows. I only watch Chopped when I'm at the gym, so I'll stay on the elliptical machine. I don't like stuffy chefs and their starch white chef coats. I think all of that is just, pretentious and kind of horrifying. But Julia wasn't like that. I mean, she was just a great woman. She was a big girl, and maybe, from growing up a big girl, she already was used to breaking down doors, and she refused to not go to cooking school when women didn't go. And she really was a wonderful pioneer. And it was one of the great tragedies of my life that I didn't get to just have a talk with her one day or shake her hand or give her a hug or something. But I love her. I also love that Saturday Night Live thing that was done on her with Dan Aykroyd, sort of making fun of her. Mm-hmm. She was sort of like the one, like if she dropped the turkey in the kitchen, she'd be like, whoops, and pick it up and keep going. She took away some of the fear and pretension of professional cooking, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar. I grew up watching her because she was the favorite of my mother. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was always hysterical. Like I said, usually on the TV, everything is so puristic, all right, and clean, and everybody is so perfect. And she was so warm, and like you said, she could drop something or make this huge mistake or splatter something, and she'd go, "Whoops."
Yeah.
And you didn't think anything of it. Okay.
No, she gave you permission to be human.
Yeah, it's like, well, this is real life. This is what happens in the home. You're making something. You splatter something. You drop something. And it's like, sometimes I think my husband calls it the 3-second rule. See if you can get it off the floor within 3 seconds.
Exactly.
You still can use it.
Look, it's like real life is not like the kitchen at Le Cirque. If you walk into the kitchen at Le Cirque, you're not even allowed to wear deodorant that has a scent to it. Everything just has to be so perfect. But real life is not like that. And my kitchen, my commercial kitchen is not like that either. Everyone has to be comfortable, and we listen to music and try to have a good time. And, you have to laugh and you have to make fun of yourself. And things happen, like some of probably the best recipes ever invented probably started with a mistake. Like I'm sure blackened redfish probably started why somebody burnt the fish, And
it's true. And like that sense of family that you bring to your kitchen. I was thinking you allow for everybody to interact. Maybe if somebody has a good idea. I mean, this is what the sense I'm getting from your
Oh, yeah,
book.
you're right. No, you're right.
And it's okay. It's like, oh no, it's not. It has to be my way. I mean,
No,
yes, you are
no.
directing it, and yes, you would like to have everything great, but if somebody's got something that you agree with.
I don't think there's a lot of room for ego. Like, we have a rule in the kitchen, which is essentially the moment someone does something better than me, then rather than my being like, offended or insulted, I say, okay, from now on, it's your job. So it used to be in the kitchen, if we were making, 50 things, I'd be running around like a maniac making 30 of them because no one could do whatever it was as good as me. But little by little, and having people stick with me and having great people, now out of those 50 things, maybe 45 of them my staff can do better than me. So, I still make the best chimichurri and the best salad dressing, but the moment someone makes a better salad dressing, I'm happy to step aside. There's not really room in the kitchen for ego. Once in a while, we'll try out a new chef who comes in with a lot of ego, and God help us, they don't last more than a day or two.
I was going to say, which is really important to know, because I think people get the wrong idea with all these programs on food.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't know what, I mean, it's stressful back there. I mean, I have not worked in it professionally, but just reading what you were saying of the demands, you have your time limits, and then somebody comes with an attitude, I'm too good for this.
Mm-hmm.
There's trouble.
No, so it's also like it changes the energy in the room. It really is tangible. Negative energy is really tangible. The same way you can taste food, you can also taste negative energy. I remember I had one person working with me, and we would have a whole crew of like 10 or 12 people in the kitchen. And this one guy would come in very depressed and, dark and complaining. And all of us, we started dragging our feet, and it just became so contagious. And I didn't even realize it. It happened kind of gradually.
Mm-hmm.
He finally left the company, thank God. And it was like a black cloud lifted. Suddenly we had energy. Suddenly we had new ideas. And that was the first time I said, all right, well, that's got to be the number one rule, like no black clouds in the kitchen,
No, that's true. And going back to that sense of family that, you incorporate with everybody, around you. Let's go to 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems you were in New York at that time. And can you you just went and you said, okay, I need to help.
Well, what happened is I live in downtown New York and in downtown Manhattan. And there was, for whatever reason, a big separation, the below 14th Street and above 14th Street. Below 14th Street, you were like living in a war zone, and you had to show ID to get back into your own neighborhood if you left it. You could go above 14th Street and people were still having brunch. They were sitting outside having
mimosas. Really?
Really, it was very strange. Nobody likes to talk about that, but it's true. It was very strange. Anyway, I looked at the World Trade Center burning from the roof of my building, and I woke up all my neighbors, and I live in the Lower East Side. Nobody likes to be woken up in the morning. We all went up, and we were just having this talk about how will they put the fire out. I guess a helicopter will come, and that'll do it. And while we're sitting there having this conversation, one of the towers just collapsed. It was so shocking. It was just like 1,000 silver cards flew in the air, and the tower came down. And you could hear the screaming for miles and miles away. I've never heard anything that sounded like that, and I hope I never do again. But from that moment on, even the other tower collapsing, even the fighter jets and my neighborhood turning into a war zone and all the things that happened, nothing really registered for a long time after that first tower. I guess I was in some sort of an altered state. And I kept thinking about that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Where he's kept building this mountain and wanting to go to this mountain. So it felt like everybody wanted to run away from Ground Zero because there was so much ash and so much ruin. And all I wanted to do was go there. So a few days after 9/11, I found out that a wedding that I was supposed to cater in South Street Seaport was, of course, canceled, and they were feeding rescue workers from the venue. So I went down there and I got my favorite waiter, and my maitre d', because catering professionals are kind of a good thing to have around when the world is ending. Anyway, they said the security guards I knew screamed over to some guy in a pickup truck, "She's a chef." And he's like, "Great." And they handed me a hard hat and some ID, and I went in the pickup truck. And I didn't know. They said, "Take her to St. Paul's." I didn't really know what St. Paul's was. I mean, I'm Jewish. What do I know about churches? But St. Paul's was, in fact, I don't know, maybe 100 feet from the collapsed towers. What blocked the view was between St. Paul's and the World Trade Center was the Millennium Hotel. And I had seen on the news right about then that they thought the Millennium Hotel was going to fall too. But I got out of the truck, and it was a little bit like walking into a snowstorm. There was so much dust in the air that it was literally like being in a snowstorm, and it kind of muffled the sound. And it's hard to explain this, but it was the most horrible thing I ever saw, but also the most beautiful. Like, there was a little orchestra that set up, and they were playing their instruments so that they could inspire the rescue workers. Mm-hmm. And there were some housewives and missionaries trying to flip a few hamburgers on some backyard grills, and maybe, 500 firemen online. And I don't know, everyone who was there was just there with their heart so firmly outside of their body, pulling them. So when I saw the barbecues, I just jumped out of the truck and threw lighter fluid on and started barking out orders. And I'm like, this is an event I'm catering. I just kind of switched into that mode. Mm-hmm. And we fed like 1,000 first responders that day. And so I thought, well, this is the one and only thing I guess I can do, but I can do it. I can flip 1,000 hamburgers for these people who are digging in this hot, smoldering debris,
We're going to get back to this.
Okay.
Okay.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com. and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
The name is Bond, James Bond.
No, the name is Joe, The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
We're back with Chef Rossi, and we're already at the end of the last segment here. But I'd like to get back to 9/11 because this really personifies the way, like I said, you're a person with a big heart. and you want to nurture the world, and you just jumped in there.
Yeah.
And that's a good example for people, to stop saying, well, this is somebody else's problem. Let's get back to where humans start, actually caring about other human beings. And I think we're getting there. So that's why I'm so glad you're here and you're talking and people can hear you. Because I know the first responders, I think everybody was in shock. And I don't know if I could handle seeing what you saw.
Well, it was like everyone was in shock, but once the shock wore off, because at first it did really feel that we were at war. I mean, there were fighter jets and people were running to the grocery store for water and all that kind of stuff. Once the shock wore off, everyone wanted to go to Ground Zero. I mean, there were thousands of people who wanted to go there. But by that point, they weren't really letting civilians in. You had to go through the Red Cross or something. Mm-hmm. So I happened to get in through the Seamen's Church. And I would say I was able to get my waiters and so on, and just because it was only September 16th. Once it got to be like 5 days later, it was hard. I had a lot of friends who wanted to go there and volunteer, and they wouldn't let them in. So there were other things they could do. They could go to piers and whatnot. There was a pier on the west side where you could go and help. You could join the Red Cross. You could give blood. But unfortunately, giving blood was a good thing to do for other people, but there really weren't these survivors that they thought that would come out of it to give the blood to. Mm. Some of the beautiful things I saw when I was down there, because people always say it must have been so terrible, but it was also the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life happen there. Like they had these rescue dogs that were sniffing around for bodies. And because they were there for so many days in a row without finding anyone, they started to get very depressed. And various volunteers, we would go and just sort of hide in the rubble or hide behind something and let the dogs find us so they would be happy and cheered up.
Yeah, these are little stories that we really don't realize. I don't really know what to think when you said when you said about the dogs. I would never think of them being depressed.
I never would have either, but their poor little hearts were getting broken because they never found anyone to save. When we all started hiding and they had the moment, then they cheered up. There was an out-of-work actor who hadn't had a job acting in a long time. And this happened, and he was like, well, that I can do. And he was looking for the one thing. Everyone wanted to find the one thing that they could do to help that they felt they were good at. For me, it was like flipping the burgers. Mm-hmm. The one thing he could do was that he wasn't scared by the smoldering fire of the collapsed towers. And so he would just get a whole bunch of hot dogs from me, maybe 100 of them, and he would go and literally throw them into the hole at the firemen who didn't want to come out because they were just going to finish their shift in there. They were looking for their friends, their brothers. So he would throw them hot dogs, and that was what he did. He threw hot dogs into this wreck, and you know what? He was every bit as important as everyone else was. He'd found his thing.
I think that's part of a good expression for your life of what you like I said, there's many stories that you share in this book. It's not, when you think of a book written by a chef, it's like, oh, we're going to have a bunch of recipes and, we should have some, but everything relates to, the chapter that you're talking about.
Right.
Which is really nice. I mean, in childhood, when you talk about the pizza bagels,
right.
We start thinking about them and, wow, there's the recipe.
Right.
But that's what I wanted to bring out this point in the book. It's not an ordinary book by a chef. There's things to be seen, and Chef Rossi writes from her heart. And, she just gets in life. She's been there, she's walked the walk. She's not pretentious. What you see is what you get. A very loving person that, of course, is going to be very protective people that she cares about, and the people that work with her. But she's there for if there's a need, she'll just jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I want people to see about you. You're extraordinary. You're a special lady. And I really think very highly of you. And I'm, very glad that you came. In our last few minutes, are you always you have a lot of years invested in what you're doing, but do you have any other projects? I mean, I know besides being an author and a radio host, and you have a blog for Huffington Post and a caterer, and I don't even know where you breathe.
Well, of course, I'm writing my second book. I mean, God help me if I were to stand still, the world would end. And I've just finished writing a screenplay on the book that you're talking about, my first book, because everyone who reads it says it should be a movie. So I finally wrote a screenplay, and I'm kind of, shopping it around a little bit. Some friends of mine, I really kind of think it'd be a great movie. I have it in my head that I don't know if you ever seen that show, Orange is the New Black.
Not yet.
Well, there's an actress on the show named Natasha Lyonne. You could Google her. I have it in my head that I want her to play me because I'm like, she is so Rossi. It was going to be Courtney Love, but I think maybe she might be a little too burnt out. So,
and you're not burnt out. I mean,
well, no, I have too much energy still. So I think Kathy Bates should play my mother.
Oh, good choice. I love Kathy Bates. I mean, I really love her. She's so great in so many things, and I can see your mom's energy in her. I can see your mom directing her. I think you're very cool. What about your dad?
My dad, I think, was a very stoic guy. He just passed away this April, so I'm out here in Los Angeles, kind of dealing with that. But he lived to be a month short of his 90th birthday, and he was very happy about the book, especially because I got in a couple of lines for him in the end. But of course, because he passed away, I have to write the second book because the first one was dedicated to my mother, so I have to dedicate one to Marty too.
That's true. And how about your sister?
My
seems
sister
to be another character.
She is in New Jersey. She's full-blown crackers, and she occasionally likes to speak in the voice of a chicken. So I have to write another book.
Definitely. Like I said, I think one of the YouTubes you were at a book signing. That's why I said, people need to use the media to really get to know people. There's, I think, a short YouTube video, and it was probably a book signing, and you're out there, the people have the wine, and you're talking, and it really looked like a very fun, comfortable time. Mm-hmm. And when you had the different friends of yours portraying different family members, I thought that was hysterical. You could be stand-up comic too.
A lot of people have been telling me that, but I don't know. That's a pretty hard job. I'm not so sure I'm ready for that. I'm better off just being the very funny author, because when people come to see me, if I don't make them laugh, they're not mad. But if I'm a stand-up comedian, they'll be mad,
Well, you're a natural, so whatever you feel comfortable in, just keep doing it because you're good.
Thank you, sweetie.
And you're warm. So, I'm, like I said, everybody, please, for a good, like I said, chicken soup of the soul type of book, please read The Raging Skillet, The True Life Story of Chef Rossi, a memoir with recipes, and you won't be disappointed because we only touched upon a few points. I really wanted you to get to know Chef Rossi, that she's not the pristine chef. You see a picture of her holding these skillets. It looks like you're going to go hit somebody with them. But, she's extremely the earth mom.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
I put on it. And very, very, very real. I mean, maybe Julia Child could have been your mentor in many, many ways. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame that you didn't get a chance to meet her, because I could see the two of you in the kitchen. I think it would be really You with your jokes and her with her, whoops.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
It would be a really good one. So, more books ahead, and right now, I know you're dealing, with a lot personally, but you have more book signings ahead.
Yeah, I have April 26th coming up at Book Soup in LA. It's on the Sunset Strip, so I'm really excited about it because it's still Passover. So I have this whole Passover thing planned, and my niece Ruby is making Passover cookies, and her husband's going to make Manischewitz spritzers, and I'm going to read the part of the book about Passover. So it's going to be 7 p.m. on the Sunset Strip on April 26th at Book Soup. I'm so psyched about it.
And you're coming back to the East Coast at all, or?
Mm-hmm. I'm coming back to New York on May 1st, and then I know that I'm going to be at Princeton, New Jersey on May 12th.
Oh, where? Because I'm next to Princeton.
I'll email it to you. I have to look it up. It's part of the I think it's part of the Jewish Book Council tour.
Okay, no.
You don't have to
do that later.
Don't worry.
When we said Princeton, she said, I'm only like 5 miles away.
Well, and I'll have updates on everything on my website at theragingskillet.com. So there's a section just for the book, but we're going to email each other too.
Oh, yeah. And just before we leave at this last minute, why the Raging Skillet?
Well, I needed a name where people would not call me for really boring food, something that would kind of say it all before they even picked up the phone. So it definitely scares off the chicken cordon bleu crowd, but people call me for some very wild stuff as the Raging Skillet.
And she has some interesting stories about that too in her book. So I told Chef Rossi I'm going to try to say this, this little here. I'm not that old. But
go ahead.
L'chaim?
L'chaim.
To life and enjoy. Thanks so much.